Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to MSP Community Live. I think this
Oh no, Matt's already gone. Hey, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Hey, he's back. There we go.
we're off to a good
Welcome back,
start.
Matt.
This could be interesting.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I think I heard that we are both sick. So this is
Mm.
could be an interesting show. So if anyone is curious, the reason that we didn't have MSP Community Live last week is the curse of Ray and I trying to do something live at an event continues. So last week, IT Nation Connect, I was not doing well sick wise. I basically did my sessions and then went back to the hotel room and collapsed on the couch for a while. Um, awesome event, that aside. Some fantastic feedback, good sessions. It was great seeing everyone, but just the most inconvenient time possible to get sick, right? Normally, you get sick on the way back from the event. And this time, I swear I know who it was on the plane, some guy coughing. Um, yeah, so just unfortunate timing, but really, really good event. I felt good about how it went and the feedback we got. How are you doing, Josh, aside from also being under the weather?
It's been a rough week, man. Been battling a cold pretty much most of the week, and finally went to the walk-in, and whatever head cold I had turned into a pretty bad case of strep throat. So I'm hanging
Oh,
in there,
man.
but um, every day is getting slightly better, but other than that, it's been a good, productive week here for me getting stuff done while working from the couch some of the days. But the show must go on, as they say.
The show must go on, and you're a trooper for doing it. So just as a word of warning, I've been having problems with Restream. It apparently doesn't like me again, where it keeps dropping my connection. So we'll see how this goes. Are you ready to do the first story? We'll just load them up and see how far
Yeah,
we get.
let's go.
Okay, so no Reddit thread on this, but we wanted to mention the CompTIA cell. Right, this is now 2 weeks ago, and MJ's post. Okay, I like that one. So the gist of it, there's kind of two things to take away from this. One is there was the initial messaging, or almost lack thereof, in terms of messaging for this. When this first broke, and in case you're not familiar, the gist of the story is that the certification side of CompTIA was spun off and sold to private equity, while the community and trade association side um, remains and will be funded by an endowment based on that sale. Um, when this first came out, I thought the messaging really wasn't all that clear on it, and the initial speculation or the initial look was that the entirety of everything had been sold and spun off. And MJ did a good job of later clarifying that it really was just the certification side. So, with that knowledge and that the trade association part is remaining independent, what are your thoughts on that, Josh? Do you think that's a good thing, bad thing, or neutral for the industry and for the community? And totally
Um,
putting you on the spot here by saying,
yeah,
what's your opinion on this
yeah.
major event?
So right away, like you had said, with the lack of kind of the announcement, I was a little bit worried because one thing I'm very vocal adamant about is I'm a huge fan of what they're doing with the MSP trust mark, and
Mhm.
that was the first thing I was worried about. But that is staying with the nonprofit CompTIA side. It's not part of what was bought out, so I'm grateful for that. As far as the other thing, I I'm very much a well. Let's sit back and see what happens. It could go. It could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. I mean, the whole thing with the CompTIA is, especially when you're just starting to try to get into the IT world. I mean, most of the time, like, hey, how do I get started? Like, A plus is the answer, and now I don't have it.
Mhm.
I've never taken it, and I don't know if it's the right answer because but
It's an
like
answer.
yeah, Net Plus and Security Plus too are pretty straightforward, answers as well. And I think the Security Plus is a fantastic starting cybersecurity cert. I think that one is indisputable as to if you're looking to get started on the security, that's the one. It is, it's not super in depth, but it covers a lot of areas with a little bit of in depth. It was fun to study for, and I think it
Mhm.
really you a taste of different aspects of security. And the whole thing with those is they're vendor agnostic. So being as it was bought by private equity, there is a chance, unfortunately, that now things can be tailored towards vendors that are also under private equity. Not saying it will happen, but there's a potential because money, has to be made, and money does influence things. So it's very
Hmm.
much, let's see what happens. But it sounds like, from the people we've talked from CompT and others, I feel that's kind of the sentiment of, hey, this. Some people are saying it's a good thing, some people are seeing a bad thing, but I think a lot of us are overall like, let's wait and see what happens for it. We can remain hopeful, but it's too early to make a full determination.
Yeah, I agree. If everything plays out the way that everyone I've talked to at CompTIA indicates it will, and then it sounds like it'll be business as usual. The obvious concern is, will the revenue materialize the way that they're saying? Time will tell. But everyone's intentions are good on this, so I'm kind of in the same boat. We'll just see if this turns out to be as business as usual as everyone we've talked to indicates it will be.
Yeah, I think the biggest
Um,
thing for me though is the MSP trust mark is staying the same, and I really like
mhm.
where they're going with that. So that was the thing I was most worried about, and my worries were subsided by this um, announcement from MJ there. So yeah, hopefully again they're using the added resources to make it better, and we can get more people involved, and kind of spread the the rising of the tides further, as they say.
Hmm. Agreed. Okay. I think we've beaten this one to death. Let's move on to the next story.
Yeah. So before you go ahead and read this, I don't know if you've read this or not. If you read the actual
Have not
story
read it.
itself, okay. So the story itself is a rant about a specific vendor. We don't need to get into it. There's plenty of time and space for those kind of events, and it's not on this show. However, they brought up a good point in that what are the benefits of having your whatever it is, if it's your entire stack or your entire security solution or anything like that. What are the benefits and the pros and cons of having all of those eggs in one basket? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Kind of like that's the discussion I wanted to have, not so much the OP's rant about this particular vendor.
Yes, we'll stay vendor agnostic on this one, although there is one that I will mention in my answer. For me, I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. Right. The obvious pro is that everything integrates more easily. The billing is usually more seamless. Services are designed to work together in many cases, product lines as well. The obvious con is that you end up with a single point of failure. You end up with some vendor lock-in potentially, especially when it comes to price negotiation, although the buying more services can also be a benefit when it comes to negotiating terms. Um, for me, it kind of turns into, I'm still using the right tool for the job, whatever that is, and integration or the ability to procure from a vendor I already have a relationship factors into that, but it doesn't necessarily factor in so much that I would turn to a different solution or a different tool based on only it being integrated with a vendor that I already have a strong presence with. Um, Now, the other side of this, though, is that we talk about single points of failure and dependency chains and things like that as a potential risk with this. Um, I don't know about you. If Microsoft Entra ID goes down, I'm in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the flip side of this. Like, it's very easy for us to say, like, hedge your bets and all that, and we're all still using that.
Well, some of us are on Google Workspace, Matt. Come on.
Same
Google
deal, right?
Workspace
Your
will jump
IDP goes down, you're in
around.
deep trouble.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're using SSO, that's a single point of failure as well. But yeah, I would say I agree mostly with that. But to me, again, it's the right tool for the job. And if it happens to be all with one particular vendor, then, then the pros outweigh the cons with that, as long as you're aware of the risks that come in with that, of having that single point of failure, of having, whether it's a business failure, an operations failure, a security failure. Um, but most of the time it's not, I would say, particularly like, this might do this better, this might, work with this better, but depends on, I mean, it's our patented answers. It depends on your organization, what you're trying to do, what's in your stack, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, to the point, if you're using SSO, or all of us are using Microsoft, or um, some people might be using Google Jump Cloud, Cloudflare, things like that. I mean,
Yeah, Octo,
there's
whatever.
massive outages that can happen, with those, and there's only so much redundancy you can build in. Or, if one of the what was it? Didn't Verizon have that like major outage a couple months ago? And there was some
Hmm.
posts on our sysadmin about how the internet went down, and we need you to look into standing up our own cell towers and cell network. And the sysadmin laughed. He's like, do you understand how much money that's going to cost? Like, it's not feasible at all. So
Yeah.
um you
Yeah,
just go.
it can be done. It's just with anything else, right tool for the job. And I do just want to emphasize that it is a factor, right? There are conveniences to integrated APIs and billing and things like that. It's just not enough of a factor that it would override a better product for me, right? If I think of all the things that factor into a product or vendor decision, integration with an existing tool set or existing relationship is one of them.
Yeah.
And it's not super high on the list necessarily, depending on
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
On my list, it's a nice to have, not a need to have. When we're evaluating different vendors, we have like a must have list, and then a nice to have list, and then there's a few things on the, like, non negotiable list. So the integrations is definitely a nice to have on that point. And these days, I mean, most of the top vendors are going to have some sort of open API and things like that anyway.
Yeah. I do want to point out something cool, though. I think this is the first time on the show that I said Entra ID without almost accidentally calling it Azure AD. So we're what, 2 years after this, and I've finally broken that habit. So,
Just in time for them to change it to something else next week.
well, right, the rule is supposed to be it takes 21 days to form a habit. I think in this case it's 21 months. So we're almost there.
Yeah, almost there. I think they changed their like Windows Remote Desktop app to just the Windows app now too. So
I know it's all
yeah.
constantly changing. That one though, that one was for some reason a big stumbling block for me. Right, it didn't take long way back when Office 365 became N365 or all that stuff, or like when terminal services became remote
Oh.
desktop services. That one was easy. This one for some reason, man, I'm old if I just talked about terminal services. That one for some reason this one has been tough, and I think we finally have broken that one. So go us or me.
Uh, all right. Well, I think your story here is next. So you want to tell us about why you picked this one here?
I don't know. The title look cool.
the the cautionary signals.
So I thought it was an interesting topic, right? Many of the threads on RMSP the past week or two have been just who likes this vendor, that kind of stuff. So I thought, oh man, it's going to be some great highlights later. Um, What are things you face as an MSP in your business that most people wouldn't notice and that you wish weren't true? I thought that was such a cool, open ended question. What are the uncomfortable truths you have as an MSP? So I intentionally didn't read any of the answers to this. So I'd like to hear, Josh, putting you on the spot a little bit. Um, Maybe the latter part of the question is easier to answer. What's an uncomfortable truth about an MSP? Um, let's go with that
I
one. What do you
yeah,
got?
I don't have any problems with this one, and this is why I'm so passionate and adamant about security and rising tides, because currently at the MSP level, barbershops are more regulated than us. we at MSPs handle extremely critical infrastructure. Depending on your size, I mean, how many businesses and stuff rely on you? And if you're handling their IT, their infrastructure, you're handling their livelihood, their businesses, not only the owners, but all of the employees that rely on a paycheck from those businesses. All of those funnel through you. So if you yourself do not have good cyber hygiene and you're not, keeping up with cybersecurity and have a secure environment, you're putting all of those businesses at risk. And even if you do have one, it still could happen. I mean, it's the worst case scenario. We've seen 0 days with multiple PSA and RMM vendors, or like with Kaseya's VSA or Screen Connect and things like that. It's terrifying how much power that we actually hold and things that can go wrong. And if you really start to think about it, you're like, holy, like this is scary. This sucks. So we have to. I mean, we we just have to stay on top of it and do the best we can with that. Because and I don't think that's something a lot of people realize is you're not just doing outsourced IT. I mean, it's most businesses are one bad click away from going out of business. And if we get that bad click, it's not one business that's affected. It is, however many clients you have. Is it 10? Is it 50? Is it 100? Is it 200? I mean, it could be a bad day.
Yeah, I agree. Right, it's the the uncomfortable truth in your case is almost just how much of a force multiplier you really are as an MSP. It's hard to remember sometimes. Um, I was going to go with a somewhat simpler one, or perhaps easier one, and that is, this is something that was hard for me to accept as a tech or admin or whatever title you want to use at first, and that's the reality that you can't really save clients from themselves. You can only do so much, right? And I would almost equate it to a doctor who can't help someone who doesn't actually want their help. The same is true with clients. You can only go as far as clients who really want you to help them. So like if you're not able to have constructive conversations about planning and road mapping and what the next step should be with clients, um, you can't make them care about that stuff. Same thing with security. I'm sure you go through that quite a bit in your prospecting, right, Josh? Or like when somebody new comes in, do they actually want to be actively involved in the process, or is it just, we want to wash our hands of security as an organization and turn it over to you guys? Which one of those goes better?
Well, Matt dropping again here. Yeah, I'll take that on first too, and it's not so much kind of on the MSP side of it as well. It kind of can kind of go with businesses too. Hey, you're back. So I was continuing what you're
Go ahead,
saying.
Josh.
But I was gonna say, like, not so much on the business side too, but as the MSP seeing all these businesses, you start seeing some of them that may or may not, take security seriously themselves, and depending on the prospect, it might not be a good fit. But you're like, hold on, you're a financial firm, and your infrastructure is held together by duct tape and rubber bands and toothpicks, and then it's just kind of scary to see that, like, um, or like some certain medical offices. And if you're like a local MSP, you're like, oh man, like you gotta just see the uncomfortable truth of how fragile some of these businesses are.
Agreed. And thank you for finishing my thought when Restream cut me off, right? It's just, it's tough sometimes to get these clients to care. And, you only have so many hours in a day, or so much effort that you can give into it. And it goes back to like client selection, identifying your ICP, begin with. Not Insane Clown Posse, by the way, ideal customer profile. Another sign I'm getting old, that the first thing I think of when ICP is Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, I think they're still around.
Are
I mean,
they?
I'm not a fan or anything, but I'm pretty sure they're still around. I don't know.
Any other good ones? Any other cautionary signals, or red flags, or harsh truths? I have another harsh truth. And that I could just make a show about this, things that were hard for me to learn as a tech. Um, this one is that it's very tempting for me, and I don't know if you had this problem. When I first started, a lot of my clients ended up with very boutique tailored solutions based on exactly what they needed. And the realization that that doesn't scale as the organization grows, right? I came in when my organization was very small and we could do stuff like that. And we had clients that didn't necessarily have the same setup as other clients because it was exactly what they needed based on their business needs. And it's hard to support stuff like that. And what happened is I got stuck, not stuck, but I ended up having to support these clients because they were all unique, special snowflakes and not a scalable, supportable model. And as we grew as an organization, and frankly, as we matured as an organization, we started setting out clients more or less the same, with some small differences between them, just because we needed something that could scale and that the rest of the organization could support when I either was not there on vacation or something, or when I was doing other, sometimes more important things like internal work or responding to security incidents or things like that. So that was a difficult thing for me to get because I always wanted to implement like the exact perfect thing for their business needs, and it's hard to accept that their business need is to have something that the firm can support as a whole, right? That's their need in addition to their unique requirements from a technical solution.
Yeah, I would say another one that's an uncomfortable truth you got to get to is, especially in the MSP world, it's it's honestly more
Mhm.
about soft skills than it is tech skills. I mean, you obviously have to have tech skills, but you also have to have a level of soft skills because it is a, I mean, it's you're providing a service, and I mean, there's plenty of instances, excuse me, in MSPs that I've worked at where they've had amazing techs, but they've had terrible customer service. The customers don't want to deal with them for projects or for anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're really good at the tech side, but like you have to follow up, you have to communicate. And, unfortunately, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I don't want to say it's easier, but the tech side is something that I have found more conducive to teaching someone, right? You can learn a hard technical skill. Learning how to show empathy and talk to customers and talk to clients or talk someone on the phone who's not in a good mood, that takes longer to develop, at least what I've found.
Yeah, 100%. I've said, yeah, you can teach someone how to push buttons on a keyboard for the most part. Maybe you can't
Mostly.
teach the troubleshooting mindset, but you can teach people
Yeah,
how to push buttons on a keyboard. It's very hard to teach the soft skills.
agreed.
So,
Okay, so I think we're talking in circles. We could make a whole show into things that were hard for me to accept when I came into the technology and MSP world, and maybe we'll do that one day. But let's move on to the next story before this turns into Matt just recounting his history coming into MSP space.
yeah. So this one here, this kind of goes into what we were talking about a little bit earlier with the certs. New level of tech coming into IT field, they don't have the basics down. So I think one of the terms they use in this is paper engineer. So this guy is,
Hmm.
he's got graybeard status. He knows how to do his stuff, but he's finding new hires don't have basic skills with command line, automation, or just kind of troubleshooting. So he's wondering if this is something that is it just him noticing it? Is it just him being a grumpy old man, or is this something that's plaguing the industry as a whole? So interested to hear your thoughts on this.
So we've talked about this before. Um, I think it's a symptom of a couple things. One is think about the way that you deploy things now. For the most part, you're not doing custom Windows installs. You're not sitting there with the installer anymore, maybe on a server, but most organizations have even gotten that down to like a VM template by now. Um, and also the way that we troubleshoot things, right? So as an industry, we've adopted the DevOps cattle not pets mindset for both good and bad. And in case you're not familiar with that, it's the idea that your endpoints are essentially disposable, right? There's no state data on them. Everything is in the cloud somewhere, network drive, whatever. And your automation is so good that it's almost not worth troubleshooting. You just blow away the endpoint. Kind of the same thing with cloud services, right? So if you're setting up a new client from scratch, you are probably not doing a lot of hard infrastructure, and most of their applications and line of business apps are SaaS applications. And so this previous mindset of like building stuff and getting the server and specking out the SAN and making sure that you have enough IOPS for the predicted database load and things like that is becoming something of a lost art, I think. And I think AI will change that too, as far as the ability to run diagnostics and troubleshoot things. So I have seen some of that, but I don't think it's because of any kind of laziness or mindset change. I think it's just the way that the industry has gone. And I'm curious to see what happens as um, the admins who grew up in that world start to retire and move on, or like just go on to other things. Will we end up at a point where really nobody can troubleshoot except for the engineers working at the SaaS providers anymore? I don't know the answer to that, but I would agree that I have seen that shift over the past maybe 5, 6 years or so.
Well, I think the other thing too is, cybersecurity is kind of the buzzword. So, especially someone trying to get a job, they say, "Oh, if I get these certs, or if I get this degree, I'm going to have a six-figure paying job." And unfortunately, that degree or those certs, they don't teach the basics. And cybersecurity is not an entry-level job. Even an entry-level cybersecurity job isn't an entry-level IT job. You have to have an understanding of the basics and have that experience. And back in my restaurant days, I had to I had to show a new hire. I basically said, "Hey, this is the cut work. So on your cut, you have to do some cleaning and stuff like that." And his particular cut, like fourth cut or whatever of the night, you had to mop. And he's like, "I've never mopped. I don't know how to mop." So not even taking IT out of it, I had to teach a 17-year-old kid how to mop. Um, so I don't think that
Interesting.
this is industry specific, and maybe it's a per user basis, and I'm definitely not going to be one of those. I'm not going to be one of those, oh, all young kids are dumb. That's not the case. It's just it's a different time. They grow up differently than kind of us. But I'll also agree with your point too that the troubleshooting and how you work things are the same. Um, I think too the way computers. Henry asked, "How do I humans still struggling on that front?" I mean, I feel we all are, man.
Yeah, right.
But we've seen with like you grew up with computers, but now everything's a tablet and a touch screen. So kids know their way around those, but now you give them Windows and they don't know what a file explorer is because the tablets and the touch screens and the ease of use of a user interface, it doesn't have a file explorer. So we've kind of gone from computer, somewhat computer literate to only knowing how to use the UI that you've grown up with.
So let me ask you this: is this a good thing or a bad thing? Right? I remember growing up, you would have some issue with Windows, and you'd be out there replacing some system file or fixing whatever registry key got messed up or all of that. These days, that doesn't really happen anymore. Overall, is that a positive or a negative?
Man, it's I want to
Putting you
say,
on the spot. We got to get some engaging
yeah,
questions here.
I know. I mean it's more efficient. Like you said with the cattle and the pets, is like, yeah, we could spend 10 hours trying to troubleshoot why this word thing doesn't work, or I could just reload your computer and be back up and going. Um, so I think it's good in that we've made things redundant, but it's bad in the fact that if you're not going to sit there like banging your head against the wall until you fix an issue, then you don't get that skill.
Mm-hmm.
If all you know is, well, we're just going to wipe and reload, you never get that troubleshooting mindset. You never get the, well, let's try this and let's try this and what's the next logical step, and you never really get that depth of knowledge. So instead, you have this wide knowledge of, never seen that before, I can do this, but then it's like, all right, well, we're going to get to here, and then, oh wait, wipe and reload, go back up to here, wipe and
Yeah.
reload. But then something drastically happens. What happens when wipe and reload doesn't work? Now you need the guy who's been down to the depths and can rebuild that. And if we make troubleshooting and everything easy, we're not gonna ever get there at that point.
Yeah, that's my takeaway too. I think the end result of this is that the number of technicians or admins who are able to deal with very difficult, hard problems or unknown things or weird things is becoming smaller. It's a smaller pool. Um, Not necessarily a bad thing, because there's an argument that if you have something weird or that you can't easily reload, that your architecture isn't right in the first place. And I do actually kind of support that. The move to automation and infrastructure as code. It's just that we're not fully there yet. There's still on-prem infrastructure. There's still, even if you're making cloud services, the whole world isn't making it based on Terraform. The whole world, half of them are just like, manually going and creating resources in AWS or Azure. Um, so we do still need that troubleshooting skill until and unless, as an industry, we get to the point where it's fully automated and all 100% SaaS, and we're just not there yet. So, um, yeah, it's a step towards good, but in the short term, it's actually kind of a bad thing. I think we just
Yep.
need that skill set, and it's running out.
Yeah, having that troubleshooting mindset is just such a valuable thing to have. I remember in my first house, it was like dead of winter, like Saturday at 9 at night, and all of a sudden our heater wouldn't light, like the pilot light wouldn't light, and I'm like, oh crap, this is going to be an expensive call that I didn't have the money for. So I like popped the cover off. I'm like, hey, it's like wires and like a board, like it's a computer in there. So I was like sitting watching it,
Hmm.
and I'd like watch what it did, like, clicked, and I'm just like Googling, like, all right, clicks 3 times, turns off, like all of this. And I mean, I definitely got lucky with this because I'm not a HVAC technician or anything with this, but because I was able just to observe and like research, what it was doing and look at the manual, what had happened is there's like a little like fire or heat stick or something, and it would become dirty. So it was like a heat sensor. So all I had to do is like take that from inside, pull it out, clean it off, put it back in, and then it fired right up. And I'm like, oh, I fixed it. Like, I've never done anything with heating or anything with that before, but the only reason I was able to do that is just because, like, in IT, I mean, that's how you troubleshoot things. Like, hey, I've never seen this
Hmm.
before, but you know what? It's a system. Like, there's a manual somewhere. You observe, you research what it's doing, and you look it up and try things until it works. And that's not really, that's something hard that, sorry, to finish that sentence, not to just the humble brag on myself, but that is something that's hard to teach in a classroom, in a certification, in a college, like a degree field. Like, I don't, how do you get that skill?
Yeah, yeah. So I have had some success with sharing materials on the troubleshooting mindset and how to do that. I know Mendy Green has published some talks on that. It's tough though without having the practical hands-on history to implement that and build up your skills over time. I agree. There's not an easy path towards teaching that.
I'm trying to teach my kids with that, where they're like, hey, this, I'm upset, I need this. Like, what have you tried? Nothing. Fix it for me. No.
I've tried nothing. We're all out of ideas. All right.
uh,
I think we can move on. We've talked this one to death as well. And thank
yep.
you, audience, for hanging in with us while we're like dying.
Uh, absolutely. All right, let's bring up this next story here. Uh,
Ooh, I like this one. All right, so the thread is, why do MSPs judge other MSPs by their stack? And if you know me, this is a massive pet peeve of mine. Um, So I'll read the thread. I had a conversation with a fellow local MSP owner earlier this morning, and during the course of the conversation, we talked about ops, challenges, and our stack. Man, everyone talks about stacks. We judged our entire operation based on the choice of RMM and firewall, as if the RMM and firewall are literally the only things that differentiate us from the competition. Thank you, OP. It's not. My 10 years of having an RMM and common firewall, absolutely zero clients have ever asked what RMM or firewall we use. So why does it matter to other MSPs? Oh man,
Hold
can
on,
we like
hold on. Well,
frame
no,
this?
I want to push back on this a little bit. There is a part that does matter. If you come in and you're using, God dang it, we don't, we're vendor agnostic on this. If you're using a specific antivirus that you could probably purchase on a CD from Home Depot or Best Buy or Walmart, and that's your stack, I'm gonna judge you a little bit. Like that shouldn't be in there. But I get the sentiment of, I mean, if you're using, I would say, what's considered an industry standard, whether you're with um, somebody who's, I would say, at least vetted and is considered widely used, whatever metric you want to use, industry standard stuff, then it doesn't matter. But if you are using so I guess I want to say subpar, but then how do I define what subpar is? Right. At the end of
Yeah,
the day, it doesn't matter. And this is one thing that, we even say at the MSPs now, like, hey, this is the tool we're using, but we're never going to advertise that, hey, this is the, you know, we say, we provide EDR. We don't, if somebody asks, we'll tell them like this is the EDR we use, but it could change because uh
it's not about the tool, really.
yeah,
It's about the
it's not.
result.
This tool is what works with us at this point, but next year maybe it's not the right one. Maybe it's not a right fit, and I'm using a different tool. And if I do all of my marketing and doing everything, saying that I'm using, Matt's EDR, and now all of a sudden, Matt's EDR goes out of business, or it turns out Matt's EDR is really crappy, and next year I'm using Ray's EDR. Well, now I have to change all my marketing, everything at that. But if I would just say, hey, this is our EDR, and behind the scenes, I'm using Matt's EDR, and then next year, then I switch to Ray's EDR. Like, I don't have to switch anything out, and it doesn't matter. And then the year after that, maybe I'm using Henry's EDR, because I'm constantly evaluating and figuring out what is the best for my organization. And I mean, if I go to Henry and say, hey, here's my stack, and he just takes it and adopts everything that's in my stack, it's probably not going to work best for his business because it
Hmm.
might not integrate with everything he uses. Things like that. I like having conversations about specific tool sets, because I've evaluated a lot of vendors in the organization. I find that there are ones that I do prefer over others, but that's personal preference. And if you're using something that I might not work for me, like, hey, it works for you, and I understand why you're using it. Um,
Also,
but
don't use my EDR or Raise because we're not EDR devs. It'd be a
but
bad idea.
to that point, then, like, if you have, so let's say you come across an MSP using Matt's EDR, and it's not good, and things like that, and it's more suited for maybe a personal device. Like, don't you judge the MSP a little bit? Like, come on, be honest.
Yeah, I probably do. I try to judge the result more so than that. And my first thought would be something like, how are they managing this at scale, right? I know there's no centralized management in this product. Or to me, it seems like a potential introduction of risk if they're using a big collection of scripts as opposed to some purpose-built RMM tool or something like that. But if we go back to what we said before, it's not about the tool, it's about the result. It's hard for me to consistently take that stance and say, okay, so is it about the tool or the result? Um, to me, my judgment would be they're probably inefficient or they're taking on significant risk by doing it this way because it's hard to consistently get the result that they're looking for with that tool, in my opinion. Um, as far as judging the efficacy of the tool, yeah, we all kind of have our opinions on what's best and what's not. So I like to think I would take the high road, but honestly, I would probably question the ability for them to manage a sizable client base at scale, depending on what I've seen.
So yeah, I get the sentiment, and there's definitely more to it, I think that that can't be the end all be all. Like there is a little bit of a gray area. I mean, what if the like the firewall they're using is just a home, not really a firewall, but like a home router, and that's just their standard. Like there's gonna be a little judgment there. Like I'm
Could
not
be an
gonna lie.
interesting debate, though, right? Like, are
Yeah.
they literally all SaaS to the point that there is no network anymore?
I mean, man, that like, I would love for them to that would be a fun one, like you judging somebody on something like that, and then they're like, bam,
So
pull
we
behind the
haven't answered the
curtains and
question, though, right? That was a good discussion. I don't think we
yeah.
actually answered the core
uh,
question of why. Why do MSPs judge other MSPs by their stack? Is it the propensity to just be very tool focused as opposed to outcome focused? Is that really the core of the issue? Is it simply like a bragging contest of like, hey, I use the cool enterprise stuff, and you're using this thing that's considered prosumer? Um, is it that you think the value of your service is really provided by the tools you're reselling as far instead of the business value? Like, what's the core of this issue?
yeah. I don't know. I think it's just kind of the behind the scenes, like, and I've had fun with it too. Like if we look at in a different industry, it's like mechanics, like they use Snap-on and somebody else uses Mac, or what is it that I've seen the meme where like when you hit your 30s, you're sorted into one of these houses, and it's the Milwaukee, DeWalt,
I'm team
Ryobi,
red
and
there.
yeah. Um, Milwaukee or whatever. So it's like it's just kind of some fun, friendly banter that
Yeah.
you've made the decision. You're emotionally attached to it, and you're passionate about it. So you just want to kind of that's like what you're attached to, and what you have a connection with, and it's easy to judge people on that.
So I'm going to give a theory, and my theory with this whole issue is that I do think that the core of the issue is that we as an industry still tend to be very tool focused and think that the quality of your service is really based on the quality of the tools. And if the tools, and if you can just find that magic stack, then you're good to go, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the key is trying to unlock the magic stack of products as opposed to the service delivery and the all the parts around that and the business consulting. I don't think we've turned the corner on that yet as an industry. We are still in that technical tool mindset, and to me, that's why you're almost looking at the stack of tools and saying, oh, they're just getting started based on what they're using. They haven't really gotten up the maturity curve yet, and they're thinking of the maturity curve as the stack selection as opposed to the service delivery mechanisms. That's my theory. At least you may agree or disagree, but I think it's that tool first mindset.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. I mean, there's a tool for everything. There's a SaaS application for everything. So if you just use this tool, if you just get this SaaS app, then everything will work. It'll fix all your problems.
Agreed.
So
All right, I think we have time for one more
yeah, we
before
do.
we go and
So
recover on the weekend. Hopefully, we're better by next week.
yeah, thanks for listening to a couple stuffed up guys here. So we talked about certifications over and over on this so let's talk about what are the most valuable certs. So according to this person, here's their top 5. So in the order here, they put CompTIA A plus first because your years of experience means nothing without that A plus cert. You should also have an MCSE because it's a relevant and valuable certification. From
Minesweeper
there, you need to
consultant.
branch out, though. You need to have your forklift safety and inspector because you never know when you need to operate a forklift in IT. You should have your food handler certification, move up from the help desk to a fast food worker. And if you have a cosmetology certification, you can look good before you go to your interview with Amazon. So anything else you want to add to this? I'll add to this list.
You want
I
a
I
real
have to
answer or
be
a joke answer?
I You can give us both, but at one point there was a Venn diagram, and I wonder how many people were in this Venn diagram. I had my ServSafe certification, which it is. I think it expired a couple of months ago. I thought about renewing it just because, but like, nah, that's a lot of work. But I had my three expert level Microsoft certs, the Azure Solutions Architect expert and the Enterprise Admin expert. I had those two and my ServSafe at the same time. And I want to know
Mhm.
how many other people were in that like Venn diagram crossover.
I'm not. So that's 0 for 1 so far.
uh,
If I were starting out now, I echo your uh, position that you took earlier in the show that some of the CompTIA ones, I don't know about A plus at this point. We just talked about you're not really doing that much hand. Like, when's the last time you went out and changed a RAM stick or like installed a new hard drive these days? It just doesn't happen as
yeah.
much anymore. Um, Network Plus, Security Plus are both very, very good, especially to understand how especially Network Plus, just to get a basic grasp of a modern architecture because it's so network driven and so cloud driven. That's a big one. Um, Most valuable. Go ahead, Josh, while I recover from my coughing
Oh
fit.
man, I um I would say yeah. When you're starting out, net the net and the security, I'll go on that. The A plus two, I know I had like techs working on it, and it was like, how many dim slots are all these, and I'm like, dude, I've been in IT for 15 years at this point. I've never had to know that. Like, I don't know, I
Hmm.
just know it. It's like it's when you're building a PC or putting the things together, it's like that one toy you have as a baby. Like, well, the square can only go in the square slot. And I don't know. I haven't taken it, but also I would say, I think they have a Cloud Plus as well. That would be good. And that was one
Yeah,
thing
they do.
that I've been adamant about too is um, the world is becoming more hybrid and more cloud focused. And I currently don't think that and I could be wrong, but none of the colleges around me, in talking with people that teach at the colleges and people that that hire people straight out of college, they don't teach anything about M365 or Entra ID or even Google, like any sort of cloud management. Like, it's all on-prem Active Directory, which, I mean, yes, it's used, but there's most of the time it's going to be some sort of hybrid. And those things, they're not secure out of the box. When you spin up a tenant, it's not, and you get a Microsoft license, it's as is. It's not secure out of the box, and it's just
Hmm.
there's a big lack of knowledge on how to manage and do those. So I'd like to see more of that sort of thing.
So let's answer Henry's question in the comment. So he asked about views on ISC squared versus CompTIA versus vendor specific search. Right, ISC squared is obviously helpful if you're specializing in security. CISP is still very widely recognized just for having it, frankly, and like looks good on the resume. Just be aware that it's mostly a security management cert. Right, the technical domain is not that deep in CISSP. Um, so IC squared is still very valuable if you want to go into security and just understand and be able to have those higher level like policy conversations and how to operate a security program and risk management program. Although ISACA might be a little more valuable if you're specializing in risk management specifically and you want to do GRC work. CompTIA, I think, makes the most sense for if you are a sysadmin technician coming up in the world like a generalist, haven't really specialized on one specific thing. And vendor specific search, in my opinion, makes sense for two reasons. One is if you are hyper specialized, or you want to be like, the world's preeminent VMware expert, or like go deep into that, which may question the type of MSP you have to work for. Or if you do a lot of work with that vendor in your MSP, like as a partner, sometimes you even need them to maintain partner levels. But if you're a whatever, right? If you're a Sonic Wall shop, Fortinet shop, whatever vendor you might use, it makes sense then to take the vendor specific search, even if you don't want to deep specialize in it, just because you'll be working with them all day. Same thing with Microsoft or any other vendor specific thing, and Microsoft is a good example that yes, it's vendor specific, but it's so ubiquitous in our client bases that it might make sense anyway. So that's my long answer to that one.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I know ISC2 has certified in cybersecurity, which is kind of their beginner one. The CompTIA Security Plus definitely goes a little more hands-on than the certified in cybersecurity, which is more of a kind of a generalist one. So I think it's either way you go, it is good. And to Dylan's point, a funny story. I wish more practitioners would be professors. So many traditional cybersecurity programs in college teach very outdated info, only so much time in the day though. So one of our local tech colleges was looking for an adjunct professor at night for network and security. And I have a friend who also is an adjunct professor there. And I was like, oh, this would be something fun to do. Like it's not like I was desperate for the money or anything. It was just more of like hey, I could, use a little bit of extra cash and like, this would be fun to do. So I applied for it and I didn't even get a call back, Dylan. If you can believe that. Like I didn't give him the resume, and then like I've done speaking engagements, like I run tabletops. I definitely do a lot of training, and so I don't know what that's about, but I also wish that, Dylan, and I tried to be the change, but it just wasn't meant to be there.
All right, so I think this is the end of MSP Community Live, what I'm dubbing Sick Bay Edition. So, one, thank you, Josh, for coming in sick
Yep.
and not feeling well and still doing the show. And thank you very much to everyone who listened, because I know that we both sound pretty congested and not great, but I think we had some pretty good discussions anyway. So, anything coming up next week, Josh, that everyone should know about?
For me, we have our November version of the IR game. We're running the business email compromise, so that takes on Friday, the 22nd, 11 Central. So please sign up for that. That is it's our third time running it, so it's still fairly new, but very valuable to get that incident response expertise and kind of run through what actually happens with that.
Big thing for me is we're still kind of on the debrief from IT Nation Connect, so nothing significant for me coming up next week. So with that, I will say thanks everyone for listening in, and hopefully next week we are back to our normal selves.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some Dayquil and tackle the next meeting. So have a good one.
All right, thanks guys.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.